Hare Krishna. Okay, we're going to start. So, we're going to start talking about integrity. And integrity has different meanings as it's applied, as we would apply it in Krishna consciousness. Maybe three aspects I want to focus on. Can we close that door? Because or better, if you close the doors to that room, they're working and they're having fun and making noise. Is that what you do when you're having fun? You make noise? Hare Krishna. So, three aspects. One aspect is that you keep your word. Whatever you say you're going to do, you do. In little things, in big things. One aspect is that your life in public and your life in private, it's the same. So you're not pretending to be something in public that's different than what you are in private. That's the second definition. And the third definition is self-deception. One is you can deceive the public, pretending to be what you're not, to get some recognition. And the other is you deceive yourself. You don't even realize that you're... self-deception is more that you don't actually understand where you're at. You're not aware of your own motives. That's it. You're not aware of your motives. That's self-deception. And you may have the wrong motives and not aware that you have the wrong motives. So three things: being honest about your vows, being honest with yourself, and being honest with other people about your position. So we're going to talk about those. And Prabhupada talks a lot about this in relation to making vows. You make a promise, and then if you make it, then it's finished. You keep it. Prabhupada talks about aligning what's inside of you and outside of you. He calls that simplicity. There's simplicity as the opposite of duplicity, being something different. Being very nice or showing yourself as one thing, but being something different. And then Raghunath Das Goswami talks a lot about self-deception in his book Manasiksha. How the mind cheats us and we're not aware of it, or we're looking for some recognition. He calls that self-deception. We're not doing what is good for our Krishna consciousness, and we're not aware of it. Or we're aware of it and we don't stop it. I once was giving a workshop on humility, and I asked the devotees, think of some service you've done where your motives were mixed, where part of your motive was to be recognized for the service. Rather than just doing it to please Krishna, think of a time when you did something and at least part of your motive was recognition. And some devotees said, I can't think of any service I did that didn't have a motive to be recognized. Amazing. Huh? And some devotee said, everything I do, I think I have some motive to be recognized. So, self-deception would be not realizing that the motives are to garner some recognition from others and not admitting that. That would be a form of self-deception. To be motivated to not understand your own motivation, to not be disconnected from your own reality in pretending that you're more pure than you are. Or it could also be pretending you're more humble than you are. Either one is a miscalculation. Or falsely pretending to be humble when you're not humble. That's also kind of self-deception. Pretty common, right?
Sometimes can it be that our intention in doing something is pure in the beginning, but in the process, then the habits and the anarthas become revealed to us?
Yeah.
And it's like,
Your intent, you started out good. Yeah, that can always happen. You started out with the right intention. Well, see, the thing is, the cheating propensity is one of the 4 propensities. So when you come to ISKCON, you have the cheating propensity. So you may come to ISKCON and think, oh, this is a pure movement, I want to be pure. And in the process, your cheating propensity takes over, and you start pretending to be more pure than you are, or not recognizing your impurity. That's what happens. That's just a reality. We all have a cheating propensity. So, a propensity to not be straightforward in this or that can also enter devotional service. Then we're not straightforward about our own bhakti. Does that make sense? Uh-huh. Yeah. Now the thing is, this is a good question, because one of the things that you see is that sometimes when a person has a propensity, like let's say we all have a little bit of cheating propensity, but for many of us that cheating propensity is just, it's part of our conditioned nature, but it's not something really big, it's just a conditioned nature that we have in this world, and when we become devotees we can kind of control it. But if someone has a stronger tendency for cheating by nature, then the danger is that when they come into spiritual life, they'll utilize spiritual life as an excuse to manifest that propensity, and that propensity gets stronger. So it's a huge problem that the religious tendency can magnify the anartha. It's just like, let's say, I have a tendency to dislike people, or I have a tendency to be prejudiced. When I become a devotee, that tendency can become stronger, because now I think I have a right to hate somebody because they're demons. Before I was a devotee, I just hated you. That was just my own emotion. But now that I'm a devotee, I have Shastra to back up why I hate you. So my hatred is stronger, because you're a demon and you're a cow killer. So I actually hate you more. So that's the danger, that if you're by nature a little crooked and you become a devotee, you could find an excuse in the name of Krishna consciousness. I can be crooked because being crooked for Krishna, we use it for his service. So I could lie, I could be dishonest. And if I have a nature to be dishonest, I'll be dishonest with myself. Like we had this phenomena where many people wanted to take sannyas who weren't qualified. That's self-deception. That's a miscalculation. Low self-esteem is you're up here and you calculate you're down here. So everyone says, oh, you're such a nice devotee. You say, no, I'm not. You're such a smart person. No, I'm stupid. That's low self-esteem. You're up here, but you'll always be down here. Self-deception, the other side, is you're here and you'll think you're up here. You won't be able to analyze where you are. You'll always think you're up here. You think, yeah, I'm ready to take sannyasa, and you take sannyasa and you can't make it because you weren't honest about where you're at. So low self-esteem, you're lower. Self-deception, you're higher. You think you're higher. So you're here, but you don't realize you're here. You don't realize what you need, where you're at. And then the other aspect of self-deception is then if you want to be up here and you think you're up here, then you'll do things to convince other people that you're up here. I'm actually here, but I think I'm here, and I'm going to make sure you think I'm here. So I'm going to walk and talk in a way that you think I'm here. That's another form of self-deception, where I deceive myself to get your praise, and then your praise deceives me, and so it works together. Does that make sense? It's kind of a mess, huh? So, the first thing I wanted to talk about is something very interesting that Prabhupada talks about, and this is a huge problem and a huge challenge in our movement. What Prabhupada, you may know that Prabhupada said if you break your vows, you're a cat and a dog, and what Prabhupada meant, I know those are hard words, and what Prabhupada meant was if you make a promise as a human being, the word vrata means choice. So when you make a promise, you're making a choice to do this. And so once you make the choice, then it's already chosen, and then you have to follow it. That's human being. Whereas an animal can't make a choice because they're bound by laws of nature, so they don't discriminate right and wrong. So, I mean, you can train them, but in general, they don't have that power of discrimination. So human beings have it. So Prabhupada's point was, if you make a promise, you always have the choice to follow it, even if it's difficult, because you're a human being. So he said, if you don't follow it, you're cat and dog, because cat and dog can't make a promise. They're bound by the laws of nature. That's why, it sounds heavy. Why did you make the promise if you don't follow your cat and dog? I mean, if we call someone a cat and dog, that's like, you dog. The Prabhupada didn't mean it in that derogatory sense. He meant it in comparison to an animal. Human being is distinguished because they can keep a promise. So, and then when devotees were discussing with Prabhupada about some people not keeping promises, then he said, well, if you weren't ready, why did you promise? Because human being means once you promise, you keep it. So he wasn't arguing that you have to make a promise, only that if you did make it, then you have to keep it. Then there was this amazingly interesting conversation where a devotee asked Prabhupada, how do you get the determination to keep your promise? And Prabhupada said, you can't ask that question. And the devotees didn't understand because they were asking, I've made my promise, I've made my vow, so how do I get the determination? And Prabhupada said, you can't ask that question. And the devotees didn't understand what. He said, no, Prabhupada, but how do we get the determination to follow? He said, can't ask it. And what he meant was, once you promise, then you don't think about it. It's like you're married, so that's it. You don't think about other women. And if you went to your wife and said, could you help me get the determination so I don't get attracted by other women? That's what Prabhupada meant. He said, you're my husband, so that's it, it's over. So you made the vow, so it's over. So that was Prabhupada's definition of promise. It was like, okay, you make it, that's it. Now, we know from experience, from history, that a lot of people make the vow who later on will say, I can't do it now, or I didn't know what I was doing, or I was young, or whatever, right? And so, Prabhupada's trying to make the point, of course, recognizing that challenge, but Prabhupada's point always was, but you made the vow. So that's what we have to look at. Not all the reasons you can't do it, but you did it. That's what he was focusing on. And we focus on reasons we can't. When we want to give it up, we focus on the reasons we can't do it, right? I was young. I was stronger. I'm in a different situation of life and so forth. Isn't it? That's what we focus on. So when those reasons were presented to Prabhupada, he just said, but you promised. He just stuck to that. You promised, and that's it. A human being, when they say they're going to do it, they do it. Now, it's like, you know that funny story when Prabhupada was chastising Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And everybody was upset with Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And basically, Tamal Krishna Maharaj felt like, I should just leave, go to some remote place. So he was just exasperated, and he said, Prabhupada, maybe I should go to China, which was like saying, maybe I should go to Siberia, maybe I should go to the moon. Maybe I should just get out of the way from everybody because nobody likes me. Maybe I should go to the moon. But he said China. And the next day, Prabhupada said, go to China. And he said, I didn't mean it. And Prabhupada said, Krishna spoke through you. So Prabhupada took it. Okay, that's what we're going to do. And he gave the order. And so he took it almost like Tamal Krishna Maharaj had made that vow to do it. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj didn't want to go. So Prabhupada was a little bit like that with vows. Okay, you made it, you didn't know what you were saying, but you made it, so that if you're a human being, whether you knew it or not, you made it, and so you do it. We don't think that way, especially not, people used to think that way, but in our society today, we are more about how we feel. I know I made the vow, but now I feel this way. So we go more with the feeling. It's putting me in anxiety, I'm feeling too guilty, it's stressing me out because I can't do it, I keep failing. We're very much on feeling, isn't it? And at any time someone gives up a vow, they'll express some feeling around why they can't do it. Isn't it? Something like that. So, whenever there was discussion with Prabhupada about this, he would always say, if you made the vow, but you have this feeling, why are you focusing on this feeling? You should be focusing on the vow. And we tend to focus on the feeling. But I'm weak, or it may be a feeling, or it may be an excuse. But the excuse is usually a byproduct of the feeling. So what are the normal excuses? I'm weak, I can't do it, I didn't know what I was doing, I was young, it's too difficult, and so forth. Now there are cases where it's true that it can become detrimental to follow a vow when it becomes unhealthy for you. But we're speaking in general here, that was not Prabhupada's mood. So the word integrity is sometimes explained as you are your word. Whatever you say, that I know you're going to do this because you said it. And what the word Prabhupada used was word of honor. When they were asking about breaking vows, he said, you gave your word of honor. So Prabhupada really stuck to that very strongly. And there's so many arguments given to him. And Prabhupada he didn't go with any of those arguments. But Prabhupada, we're weak. So you're weak, but why do you give in to weakness? In other words, okay, you're weak, but you made a promise. So you're going to focus on the weakness, you're going to focus on your promise. So they were focusing on the weakness, not on the promise. And Prabhupada's saying, but you made the promise, that's where you should focus. But because in our culture, we're more feeling-oriented than vow-oriented, we would focus on the feeling. I can't do it, it's hard, I'm weak. And they would, for us, they seem like valid excuses, isn't it? Isn't weakness a valid excuse? Why don't you chant your rounds? I'm weak. It's like this, one teacher said something quite funny. He said, of all the excuses you could make as to why you didn't do something, the excuse, I was sick, is the best one, because you'll get the most sympathy for that. Prabhu, you were supposed to do this. Why didn't you do it? Oh, I was sick. Everyone will say, oh, okay. So he was joking. He said, if you need a good excuse, use the excuse, I was sick. And everybody will be okay with that excuse, isn't it? Oh, you poor thing. So, I have a very heavy story. And there was a devotee in our temple who was having a premature birth. And she got extremely weak and she couldn't chant her rounds. Her husband wrote Prabhupada, said, can we make them up? It's going to be like a few weeks, you won't be able to chant. Can we make them up? Prabhupada said no. So, she wasn't feeling well, and that seemed like a good reason, but Prabhupada said, no, you have to do it. So I think Prabhupada understood that we gave too much energy to excuses. So he understood that's our nature. We give too much to feeling, how I feel, as the criterion for action, rather than what's right, what the vow is that I promise to do this. So in the vows workshop, we ask everyone a question: how many things have you promised people that you haven't delivered yet? It could be owing money, or returning a book, or promise to take somebody somewhere. And people start making their list, and it's pretty embarrassing when you realize that we make a lot of promises, but we don't remember them, because we don't always take everything we say seriously. Okay, I'll be here at this time, or I'll be back, or when I get back, I'll call you. And then we call 2 days later, and we say, what do we say? I'm sorry. Now, there's a psychology about saying I'm sorry. From our point of view, if we say I'm sorry, then we think, okay, everything's good. I said I was sorry. Why are you upset with me? I said I'm sorry, okay? All right? Why are you upset? The reason people are upset when you say I'm sorry is because it sounds like an excuse. So one teacher said, if you are supposed to do something and you don't, there are about 5 things you say before you say I'm sorry. I'm sorry is the last one. The first, I can't remember all of them, but it's something like, I must have inconvenienced you. It was my fault. I shouldn't have done it. I can imagine it caused trouble for you. You empathize, and then you say I'm sorry. Otherwise, just to say I'm sorry sounds like an excuse to do it again. Isn't it? You ever feel that way when someone says I'm sorry? You go, yeah, and you're going to do it again and say you're sorry. And saying you're sorry is your excuse. There's a formula around this idea. It's quite interesting. If you commit to something and you can't do it, but you have a good excuse, the formula goes like this: commitment plus good excuse equals commitment. You understand? As long as the excuse is good, it's still a commitment, even if it's not. So this is a very Western way of thinking. As long as my excuse is on a scale of 1 to 10, close to 10, then a commitment plus a good excuse equals commitment. Now, obviously sometimes there's forces of nature we can't control. But we're talking here about something you could control. Isn't that funny? Have you ever thought like that? I couldn't commit, but as long as I have a good excuse, it's the same as a commitment. And then you say you're sorry, and the people think, yeah, you're saying you're sorry is just an excuse for not doing it. Right? So that was basically Prabhupada's mood. He used the word of honor. You've given your word. That's a human being. It's interesting in the instructions of Bhishma Dev, when he's instructing Yudhisthira, he lists, I think, 10 qualities. You know those 10 qualities? 10 qualities of a human being when Bhishma's instructing Yudhisthira. I think, one of them is not to get angry, one of them is to forgive, and I'm pretty sure one is not to lie. And Mother Bhumi, as you may know, said, I can tolerate anything but a liar. Cheating is like, it's considered the lowest, right? Isn't it? Very low. What's the context of that story? You remember why?
When the demigods went to, Bhumi said that Krishna was, he couldn't take the weight of the sinful activities from all the demons on the planet because of the lies.
Oh yeah. There were so many, yeah. So there was so much of a burden on the earth. And why was it, what was she said, what did she say? But I could bear anything but a liar? That's the heaviest burden? Yeah. And then Kali Yuga, what's the last leg? The last leg is truthfulness. So it's, now, so Prabhupada's definition, about 3 or 4 conversations, and Prabhupada's definition of integrity in regards to taking vows was, once you say it, you do it. And it's over. That's it. Whatever you say, you do. Whatever the difficulty is, you don't focus on the difficulty. You focus on the vow you made. Now, there's a tendency that people have when there's a problem, they focus on the problem more than the solution or the goal. Like, let's say you have a goal and you have a problem. There's 2 things you can focus on, the goal or the problem. And a lot of people, unfortunately, focus on the problem, and what happens when you focus on the problem? You give it energy. Problem seems to grow, get bigger. What happens when you focus on the solution? The problem seems to become minimized. Correct? Isn't it? So that was Prabhupada's mood. It was always, whenever there was a problem, and someone would come to Prabhupada and said, this is what I did, I made this mistake, his mood was, what's the solution? What are you going to do? It was always, it wasn't focused on, why did you do that? What's wrong with you that you did it? It was more, what are you going to do now? What's the solution? Right? And so that was just Prabhupada's general mode of operandus. It was always moving forward. It wasn't so much regretting what happened or lamenting about what happened, but now that you did this, how can we move forward? You see that, for example, if a sannyasi gave up sannyas, then Prabhupada would say, come back with your wife, take up your service. It was for Prabhupada, it wasn't, let's analyze why you fell, let's chastise you, and all these things. It was, okay, let's how do we move forward? It was always moving forward. And that's sattva-guna, moving forward. Tamaguna is getting stuck in the mistake and then dwelling on it. And then if you dwell on it, you feel bad and it disempowers you. So there's this conversation where a devotee was telling Prabhupada that one of our godbrothers can't follow all the principles because he's spiritually weak. And so Prabhupada said, why are you focusing on the weakness? That same example. Why do you focus on what's wrong? Because you give it energy. And as you focus on it, it becomes more real. So his idea was, you think the weakness is a problem, and the more you think it's a problem, the more it becomes a problem. The more real it becomes for you. Because that's what you're focused on. Have you ever said, I'm weak? Yeah, if you say, I'm weak, you will focus on weakness. Because that's your identity. You'll just naturally grab it. That will be your focus because that's your identity. If you feel that you're strong, you'll naturally focus on solutions. Because as you identify, I'm a strong person, I'm a determined person, I'm a lazy person, I'm a weak person. So your tendency to focus on a problem or a solution also is related to your identity, how you see yourself. Well, I'm not very serious.
Yeah, because acknowledging something is one thing, but when words come out of the mouth and you say it, it's almost like you're identifying with that.
And yeah, exactly. Well, but the thing is to realize, if you say it, it means that's how you think, and it means that's how you identify. Because otherwise you wouldn't say it. But if you're smart, even if you identify that way, you won't say it because you know it and reinforces it. So, for example, in this case, they said, Srila Prabhupada, this devotee's weak, which is probably what the devotee told them. Right? Now, if you went to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, I can't follow this because I'm weak, I personally wouldn't say that to Prabhupada because I know he won't accept that. He would say something, so if you're weak, become strong. Or if you're weak, do something about it. That's Prabhupada's response. Not, oh, you're weak, so therefore don't do this. If you're weak, okay, so that's an acknowledgement of a problem, but you look at the solution rather than get stuck in the problem, right? Oh, I have this problem. It's like, let's say you had a problem, which is a piece of glass in your foot. If you had a piece of glass in your foot, what's the first thing you would do?
Take it out.
Would you go, wow, this piece of glass, look how big that is. It really hurts. Oh, wow. I wonder if it's dirty. Oh, it really hurts, and you touch it. Ah. You wouldn't do that, would you? Would you do that? What would you do if you had glass in your foot? You would take it out. So that's Prabhupada's, that's the way he's dealing with problems. That we're going to Prabhupada and saying, I have this piece of glass in my foot, and we're sitting there screaming, and Prabhupada's saying, take it out. And we're saying, no, I can't. It hurts too much. I can't take it out. We're just focused on the pain. It's something that stupid. So Prabhupada's attitude was always, if you have a problem, why aren't you doing something about it? And our attitude often is, I have a problem, then I focus on it. And then it exasperates because I'm focused on it. I'm giving it energy. It's becoming bigger and more powerful because I think this problem is insurmountable. That's why I'm focused on it, isn't it? Don't you focus on a problem because you think you can't overcome it. And you wouldn't focus on the solution because you don't think you could overcome it, so why focus on the solution? So then you get stuck on the problem. And then when you identify that problem with you, like, I'm having trouble following this principle. So because I'm having trouble, that means I'm weak. Now I've identified myself as weak. And once I identify myself as weak, why would I try to follow that principle? Because weak people can't. Does that make sense? As soon as you identify as weak, why would you, here's 100 kilos. Who can lift it up? Okay, we'll go 50 kilos, because Radhika Nagar could probably lift up 50 kilos. I don't know if I could, but he could. But none of the ladies here, when they look at it, they just look at it and go, I can't lift that much weight. So they're not going to try. The only person who's going to try is someone who says, I could lift that. At least I'll try. I think I can lift that. So if you have an identity, I can't lift this problem out of the way, you're not going to try. And then the problem, right? It paralyzes you. That's the problem. And so, one second. And so, if you see how Prabhupada guided devotees, he always tried to encourage them that Krishna would give them strength and that they shouldn't focus on their weakness. Because the power can come from Krishna, and therefore you could conquer problems that on your own you couldn't. So the identity was more humility. Maybe I can't do it, but Krishna can do it. But I'm willing to try, and I'm not going to give in to the weakness. Yes. Radha. Yes.
Speaking about Mataji's body, Mataji, she was for 5 years trying to teach herself to become weak rather than use.
Oh my God, I shouldn't laugh, that's pretty sad.
Because a lady is strong when she is weak in service to her Prabhu. No?
What do you mean by weak? What's your definition?
Humility, chastity.
Humility is a strength. Humility is a power. Chastity is a power. None of those are weaknesses.
Ability to be on the background, not to be right in front, but to be behind the husband.
It may be a strength, but it may not be. It depends on the situation. What if your husband's doing something wrong and you better stop him? You better get in front of him and stop him.
She's trying to instruct him with Shastra, but she doesn't
Yeah, of course not. You should never treat your husband or wife in a way that you wouldn't treat other devotees. She said she's trying to instruct him, but she's trying to be humble and gentle. But that's the way you should be with everybody. But we think, I should be that way with everybody, but with my husband and wife, then it's special. But that's not right. It's the wrong way of thinking. Well, it depends. It's like, let's say you're a soldier. You don't just go around the city shooting people because you're strong. You shoot the enemy. So here we're describing strength to overcome anarthas, not to control people. That's the context. When we say weak, Prabhupada meant weak. You're weak against your battle against Maya. You're weak, and you're focused on your weakness, and you give into your weakness. And it is so important to catch yourself saying these things. I'm weak. Because once you say that, it's like Maya's laughing when you say that. Now I got him. He thinks he's weak, so he's not going to fight me. Some big guy comes and starts pushing you around. You're not going to fight him. There's a technique, a fighting technique, where some big guys, so you play weak, like, I can't fight you, I'm just, I only weigh 150 kgs, you weigh, I only weigh 50 kgs, you weigh 100, you play weak, but you're actually stronger than him, so he kind of takes it easy, and then you beat him up. Did you know that? Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, become a devotee, you've declared war on Maya. He talks a lot about determination. So, if you say, I'm not determined, I'm not a determined person, what have you just said? I want to retranslate that. I'm not determined. What does that mean? What have you actually said? Basically, you said, I'm not going to try. I'm giving up. Isn't it? To say I'm not determined, to say I'm weak, is basically saying I'm not going to try, because there's no use in trying. So everything you say about yourself, you catch yourself, you listen, you realize that's an identity with which you operate. And it can be the other way. I'm the greatest devotee in ISKCON. No, you're not. I'm the smartest person in this class. No, you're not. So it can work in pride, or it can work against you as a weakness. Now, there's another thing which is really interesting. This Brahmin from Avanti Desh, he said, Aham tarisyami duranta tamo. I'm going to get out of Maya. I'm going to do it. I'm going to cross the ocean of material existence. That was his determination. I'm going to do it. And then, if one of us said that, we'd all be speaking behind your back saying, so puffed up. Did you hear what she just said? She said, I'm getting out of Maya. Nothing's going to stop me. Wouldn't you think that's, if someone said that, wouldn't you think that's pretentious, ostentatious? You know the word, ostentatious? It's like self-pride. It's all about me. I'm going to do this. I'm going to become the President of the United States. So the devotee's saying, what seems to be a very proud statement, I'm going to cross Maya. Because we would say, be careful, Prabhu, don't get so confident. And he's completely confident. It's interesting, isn't it? So why? The second half of the verse says, he said, I can say this because I'm going to follow the path of those who cross the ocean, the previous gurus. Right? Aham Trishami Rantara. I'm gonna, so I can say it based on the fact that if I follow them and do what they did, then I could say, I'm going back to Godhead, rather than saying, in this life, I'm not going. If you say, this life, I'm not going, it translates to me, you're not trying to go. Yes?
So is it our confidence is on the process?
Yeah.
We understand, or we're weak.
Yeah, we're humble enough, yeah.
But we know that Krishna's message.
Yeah, it's the process, yeah. That was his point. I'm going to do it because of the process. But the thing is, it's like Prabhupada says, go back to Godhead in this lifetime. So if you say, I'm going to go back to Godhead in this lifetime, in the mood that I'm going to follow Prabhupada and he promised, and this is, or at least I'm determined to go back to Godhead. I don't know if I will, but I'm determined because that's what Prabhupada wants. And I'm going to try everything I can to do it. That's good. Right? That's without pride. And then, that's all I can do is try my best. But Prabhupada said, if I do this, I will. So I have that confidence that he will make up for whatever I lack. So that's my humility. So my humility becomes my confidence. There has to be room for that transcendental pride and that transcendental determination that's free from pride, or it has transcendental pride in it. Otherwise, what is your determination? You say, I made a vow, my whole life I'm going to do this. Well, that's what you vowed to do. So to say you're going to do it is good. It's not pride, it's just your dedication. You're saying it out of devotion to your spiritual master, that I promise to do this, I'm going to do it. And you're basically committing to yourself, and you're committing to all the devotees, committing to your guru and the deities. So I think, the thing is, what's so interesting about this is that you can say that totally free from any pride, isn't it? I'm going to do this. It's just pure bhakti, it's just pure service, devotion. I feel it's my duty to Prabhupada. So out of my duty to him, my devotion, I'm making this vow, I'm going to do this. And then the point is that even the most humble thing can be a source of pride for you. Even if you try to take a humble position and think in a humble way. But that can turn into pride if that's your nature. Because you become proud that you're becoming humble. Or you become proud that you're not proud. Isn't it? Like anything can turn into pride. I'm really determined to get up early. So then I get up early and I become proud. Hey, I'm getting up earlier than all the other devotees. That means I'm better than them. So if that's your nature, that's how you think, no matter what austerity you'll do. Then you fast on Ekadasi, but it's your nature to become proud, and you'll think, well, all these devotees should be fasting. Why aren't they fasting? What's wrong with them? Then the whole Ekadasi you'll spend criticizing devotees who aren't fasting. Because that's your nature. You're proud. And so even if you do the right thing, it turns into pride. And if you're not proud, even if you do the wrong thing, it never turns into pride. It's you yell at somebody, but it's total humility. It's out of your defending Krishna. Isn't it? So what Prabhupada was dealing with this concept of word of honor, this concept of integrity, I should say that when Prabhupada put someone in charge of a temple as a temple president, really he was putting his trust in that person, and that person would set an example, that person would be true to their word, they would take care of the devotees, they would be reliable, dependable, they wouldn't exploit anybody. So that's what Prabhupada expected, that this is the standard of Krishna consciousness, and if you're in a leadership position, you have so much opportunity to take advantage of your position, but you never will. That's the standard Prabhupada established. And I guarantee you, in our organization, we have less problems with this than any organization in the world, because Prabhupada established this, seriously established this, I mean, our organization is so pure that when a leader messes up, he voluntarily just walks out. He doesn't stick around and keep doing it behind closed doors. He just knows, I can't do it, and this movement is too pure for him to be a leader. He just steps down, isn't it? It's rare that they stick it out and try to hold on. Usually at some point, you just know this is hypocrisy. So that's the standard Prabhupada set. He set a very high standard. So that's the kind of integrity that he wanted. And my personal experience with Prabhupada is that that was the kind of integrity that people had in his generation. And so when he came to America, it didn't seem to me that he had experience of people who would say one thing and not do it. Because he was initiating us, he was getting us married, and I think he was quite shocked when people gave up their vows. I don't think he expected that. I don't think that was his experience in his generation in India. So we were told, I read, that we were told that in the early 1900s, when people did business, they didn't have contracts. They didn't need contracts. They just made a verbal agreement, they shook their hand, and that was the contract. They understood it and they followed it. Isn't that interesting? So it was a different time. Things have degraded from that time. No contracts. Just, okay, this is the price, you pay me every month, this, shake the hand, and it's finished. Isn't that amazing? No contract. Just a handshake. We agree. So I think Prabhupada came from a culture like that, and when he came to America, he expected that if we made a vow of marriage, for better or for worse, we would keep it. We made initiation vows, we would keep it. We made vows to be temple president, we would keep it. I was temple president when I was a young devotee, and I didn't want to do it. It was really difficult, and I really wanted to get out of it. And I was trying to find ways to get out of it without having to say, I quit. Trying to, create situations where maybe it's better I do this service over here. Maybe so-and-so could, not that I quit, because I understood that is 100% against what Prabhupada wanted. That once you take a position, he just wanted you to keep it. Like you take this position, then you keep it, no matter how difficult it is. That was Prabhupada's mood. So, as Westerners, our mood was, I don't feel this, I don't feel that. I don't feel like it. That's our mood. And the devotee went to Prabhupada and said, I'm so discouraged the way the devotees are treating me that I quit. And then Prabhupada said, you don't have a right to quit. The only person who has a right to quit is me. Because no one has been up against what I've been up against. So if you want to act on feelings, I'm the only one that has a right, and I'm not going to quit. You don't have a right to quit. You haven't been through a 10th or a 100th of what I've been through. So what is Prabhupada saying there? He's saying, I have a right to quit if I act on my feelings, because I was totally discouraged. Had so many difficulties. You don't have a right. And so this is how we work. It's not about how we feel. Does that make sense? So that was why Prabhupada was so heavy. I mean, he was setting this very high standard of integrity. That once you say it, you do it. That's it. Just forget it. Forget not doing it. You've said it, and that's it. How many of us act that way? What's, in ISKCON, what's the standard of integrity on a scale of 1 to 10 of the average devotee? 5? 6? 4? 7? How many times do we say we're going to do something we forget? We promise someone, we don't do it. We say, I'll meet you there at this time, we're not there. It's very common. Our generation doesn't have that high standard. Prabhupada would leave on a morning walk every day at the same time. Exactly. And X Prabhu were supposed to be there. He wouldn't wait. It's time to go, he'd just go. That's the time he goes. That's it. It's a nice standard. You're coming, this is when we're leaving. You're not there, we go. And the amazing thing is that every day he would come back to the temple to greet the deities. Always on time. No matter where he went walking, no matter what. Somehow he was always aware of the time, and he would always end up back there on time. It wasn't like he was making us wait or making the deities wait. And every letter that Prabhupada received, he replied to. He didn't miss a letter in the pile. Did you ever miss a letter in the pile? The pile of emails? He didn't miss one letter. Isn't that amazing? You think that's amazing? Did you know that? Every letter he replied to. And he took his duty as guru, 100%. As long as devotees were willing to follow, he would never give up on the devotee. Ever. So why don't we have some questions? And people out in the internet world have some questions. I think. Yes?
As I said, sometimes, like you said, Prabhupada said he's going to leave at this time, and if these people are meant to be there, we would just go anyway. Sometimes we end up accommodating other people, and then it compromises our policies.
Accommodating other people?
Not, for example,
and then what?
Well, if, for example, Prabhupada, if we say I'm leaving at 6 o'clock, we'll leave at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll make it be leaving at 6 o'clock, but if someone else is meant to be there, we wait around. So it's a fine line where you're still, it's where it keeps on the level of diligence within yourself rather than going into any negative emotions towards the people you're waiting for.
Well, I would say, as you know, in ordinary everyday dealings with people you deal with all the time, it would be kind of weird, you know. If your daughter comes back 3 minutes late and said, "Sorry, no breakfast," you know. But if you're doing something and it's punctual, like we're taking a Ganga ride, and you just make everybody know the boat leaves at this time if you're not there, even if you paid, you know, we're going to be gone. So that, you know, when you have to make it known, you make it known. But if you're a manager, I'll tell you a funny story. This is like a classic story. So, generally in ISKCON, we're not always that punctual. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
So I was used to that. You know, devotee would say meeting starts at 2. It could start at 3, it could start at 2:30, it could be canceled. You know, I was working with the devotee. That was kind of his mode, you know, where you'd show up at 2 and you'd sit around and he'd be talking to somebody for a half hour. So that's kind of what I was used to. And then another devotee came, and he was now the co-GBC, and so he said, I'll meet you at noon. It's about 5 to noon. I was walking by his room. In his room, there was a glass door, and I had to walk by his room to go to the bathroom. So I saw he was taking rest. So I thought, he's taking rest. I'm not going to come at noon. I don't want to wake him up. Right? So I figure, okay, you know, at least give him 5 more minutes, whatever. So I came at 12:05, and he said, "Why are you late?" I was waiting. I said, "Because I saw you resting at 5:12. He says, "I was up and ready for you." So now I knew, when dealing with him, when he says noon, he means noon. So that was his personal, that's the way he operated. And so by doing that, you know when you deal with him. And the other devotee, when he says noon, it's like, you don't really worry about it because he doesn't worry about it either. So that's the problem. You set standards by your behavior. But I think the problem is if we don't establish some standard, then how can anybody take us serious? Because you don't even follow your own standard. So that's something to consider. There's another story. This is a great story. I really like this one. I was in, we were doing a japa workshop, and it was in conjunction with a youth tour. So I had parked my van in a spot where the kitchen devotees needed to park to unload groceries and stuff. So I was giving the course, I couldn't move it. So I think Purva came and got the key and set out and gave it to this devotee. And then I told the devotee, make sure as soon as you move my van, give me the key back. And I think Purva was there. So he moved the van. An hour went by, 2 hours went by. The session ended. I had to go home, take a break. And I didn't have the keys. And Apurva, and I told Apurva, because Apurva was working in the kitchen, and this devotee was working in the kitchen. I said, he didn't give me the keys back, and I told him to give me the keys as soon as he got here. And Apurva had done some courses in integrity. And he said, if that person had taken a course in integrity, he would have given you the keys back immediately. But so many of us, we act outside of integrity because we're not used to it. It's not the way our culture is. This generation is just kind of more how you feel. So that made an impression on me. I really like that. So, if we actually take courses in integrity and understand the importance of it and commit to it, then he would have, when I said I need the key back, it would have just immediately clicked in his head, I have to give the key back, because that's the way I operate. And so we can all improve in that area. Yes? Another realization I had is that if we don't have integrity with the little things, it may create a habit and we won't have them with the big things. So it's you get used to doing something with the small things. Well, it's okay, I didn't do this. Then take the big things, and that'll become okay. You'll take it lightly. Does that make sense? So it's like anything you practice on the little things, it can't influence the big things. Okay. I think we have a question. What is wrong about wanting to be recognized? Depends why you want to be recognized. What do you want to be recognized for? There's a difference between acknowledged and recognized. So if you mean acknowledged, you want to know that what you've done is right, that's acknowledged, and there's nothing wrong. Recognized is a human need. Everybody wants it. But if you're serving Krishna to be recognized, that's an impurity. You should serve Krishna to please him. If you're engaged in service with the motive to be honored by other devotees, that's a form of pride, so it's destructive. So the answer to that question, what's wrong with it, is everything's wrong with it. In fact, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that if you, in the society of devotees, if you maneuver yourself to get the praise of others, that's considered evil. The word he used was evil. Said, if you think, Prabhu, we need somebody to do this service. And you think, if I do that service, I'm going to get recognized. I'm going to get honored. People are going to see me. It's the Gaur Purnima festival. If I could just give class, there'll be like 3,000 devotees who'll see how smart I am. And I'll spend like 3 weeks studying for this class. I'm going to give class better than anybody, and then I'll be the man. If that's your motive, he said that's evil. It's an evil desire. Isn't that heavy? Sometimes you use the word wicked and sometimes evil. So if you're asking what's wrong with pride, it's evil. Because you know what it is? It's a form of sense gratification. So I'm trying to extract sense gratification from all the devotees. Praise me. I'm going to do something nice. Praise me. Then I get this gratification in my ego. So I'm going to join ISKCON so I can get ego gratification. When you join ISKCON, there is nothing that you do that is supposed to give you any ego gratification at all. There's nothing that we do. This is ego-free zone. There's nothing we do to give us ego gratification. That's what spiritual life is. So that's what's wrong with pride. When you try to gratify your ego, that's material life, basically. Raghunath Das Goswami, he compared it to donkey urine. So, pride is like donkey urine. So the next time you think of pride, think of donkey urine. Now, if you mean just being appreciated because you want to satisfy the devotees, that's different. Is it only wrong when we're not honest? It's only wrong when you're trying to imitate Krishna. Well, let me put it this way. Go through the Bhagavatam, and every time a devotee becomes proud, what does Krishna do? He does something to bring him down, isn't it? Again and again and again and again and again. Even with Hanuman, the first time Hanuman met Lord Ram, he didn't know who he was. He went. Lord Ram was there with Lakshman, and they were in the forest of the Vanaras, the monkeys. And so Sugriva sent Hanuman, said, go see who that is. So it was like an enemy, a spy. You know, they were thinking this is like Bali's spy, he's come to kill us. So he was coming with this mentality, that, who is this person? Maybe he's going to kill us. So he said, who are you? He said, I am Lord Ram. I am Lord Ram. This is my brother, Lakshman. And then Hanuman bowed down and said, my Lord, I've been hearing about you ever since I was young. How is it that I didn't recognize you? He said, because you came with a crooked mentality. You came with a mentality that who is this person infiltrating on our property? So you couldn't know me. So when you have mentality like that, then Krishna he doesn't like it. And read the Bhagavatam. Anytime a devotee becomes proud, Krishna takes care of him. He does something to. Have you had that experience? Krishna does something to expose your pride. I personally think, better not get pride, then Krishna doesn't have to embarrass you. But when we become proud, Krishna will tend to embarrass us at some point. Isn't it? So just don't be proud. You don't have to worry about being embarrassed. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Yes?
Integrity. We find sometimes that devotees, the philosophy around that, sometimes, we take vows and it's difficult to follow them.
Yeah.
And we may need to...
I'll just repeat. We take vows and it's difficult to follow. Yes.
There's a time in life when you have a need that you cannot follow them. And if you need to follow them,
because it comes a time in life where you can't follow them, and if you follow them, it's going to create problems.
You may end up in a worse situation.
Yeah, you may become worse.
You actually...
Yeah.
So what does integrity follow?
So how do you deal with that situation where you come to a point where following them is going to be worse? Not following them is going to be worse than not following. Right? I can give two answers. One I think Prabhupada would give, and this sounds funny, and one I would give, because then he'll say, why would you give an answer Prabhupada didn't? No, Prabhupada, the general answer Prabhupada would give is just what I said, because that's a principle that he would want to stick to. If there's a situation where it's detrimental, but let's say, for example, a woman's being physically, verbally, or sexually abused in a marriage relationship, then in that case, if it was becoming destructive for her or her family or her children, then separating, breaking that vow that I'll stay with my husband my entire life would be the best thing for her safety. Sometimes devotees who vow to chant 16 rounds can't, and it produces tremendous amounts of anxiety. So if they can do 8 or something, they do that, they're in a more positive frame of mind. The principle, the way I see it, and this is the best advice I could give, if that's the actual case and you have to make an adjustment, the principle is to work your way back up. Don't say that the adjustment, don't rationalize the adjustment, but take it as a failure on your part, and that, but in the present situation, this will be the best thing for me, although it's not the standard, and that at some point in my life I will work to come back to that standard. Then it's at least...
Would you say that you have a lesser level of integrity, but you still have something?
Yeah. I mean, in some cases it is valid that,
I'm thinking of the example that is already here in my when he went to Navadvip with a prostitute, and then when Prabhupada found out, he said, well, you have such a beautiful wife.
yeah.
So he did try to keep his integrity, and then he ended up, doing something much worse.
Yeah. He's saying that a devotee went to a prostitute, and when Prabhupada found out, he said, well, why'd you do that? You're married. You have your own wife. So, if you want to give a broad definition of no illicit sex, that's the broad definition. You keep it in marriage. So in that sense, you could say he was following, just maybe a lower standard of it. I was thinking more in terms of,
Yeah, I got your point. I mean, that when you took it, it's relevant. That's my question also.
yeah, that's the general. Illicit sex means no sex outside of marriage, which obviously would include prostitutes. So if you're married, if it's do it in marriage or do it outside of marriage, do it in marriage. At least it's not sinful per se. And it doesn't contaminate society. If you want to chant Shuddhanam, then you have to be celibate in marriage. That's just what you have to come to. So if you can't come to it yet, did you understand? I have to come to it. And I'm going to try to come to it, and until I can completely control it, then I'll have to maybe suffer in some way, spiritually, but this is my goal. And some people suffer psychologically because they're failing. 16 rounds, I'm chanting 8 rounds, that means I'm failing. If they talk to their guru and the guru says, okay, chant 8 and gradually build up over the next few years, then when they chant 8, they're not failing anymore. So it's a positive psychology. The same 8 now is success, before the same 8 was failure. So sometimes we have to adjust that way. The sexual thing, I mean, the real problem, that's the real problem. Pride and sexual attraction, that's the problem. So it's no surprise people will be challenged with it. But the main point is don't give up. Like, I may be falling, but my mind, my philosophy is, but I've made this promise to my guru, and I've slipped many times, but in this life I'm going to come back to that standard. That's what I want to do. That's the attitude. Otherwise you rationalize. Yeah, nobody can follow, they're all fake. Behind doors, they're all doing it. And so you've rationalized it. And what's the point of that? Just so you can feel good. So, all right, if you can't do it, do less, so you won't be stressed out and guilty and in anxiety. But don't make that the standard. Just say, I couldn't do it and I failed. But I'm going to try to come up, and I know Prabhupada's merciful and I know he'll help me. A lot of devotees are like that. They'll admit that they failed, and they'll admit that it's wrong, and they'll admit that they want to come to that standard, but they just can't right now. So they're accepting responsibility. So that's good. Because that's how you'll be successful. It's kind of, it's a mixture of unhealthy and healthy psychology, because the unhealthy part is to rationalize it. The healthy part is to understand your shortcoming and be able to at least exist in a somewhat sane and happy way while you're trying to improve, rather than degrading yourself and beating yourself up, because that would be counterproductive. So it's kind of like the art of how to be remorseful without handicapping yourself. Handicapping yourself. You know, so it's like a balance, you know. Okay, I've done the wrong thing, but if I lament too much, then I can never get myself up, because that'll hold me down. So I've done the wrong thing, I accept it, and then I can work. Someone had a question? Yes.
The tendency can be that if there is some difficulty in whatever area, then to actually criticize someone else as a look at what they're doing, and you know, like as a
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people
Yeah.
find fault with someone else to make them feel okay, instead of
Yeah.
understanding religion where they're at, but keeping the standards.
Well, that's another form of self-deception also. Yeah, well, another aspect of that is, like I was saying, well, why don't you follow this? Well, he doesn't follow it. It's because he doesn't follow it, I'm justified in not following it. So, what's the point? There's no point. You know, it's like, if you're failing, why would you want to justify the failure? Because by justifying the failure, you can't improve. Right? You understand? Like, I'm failing for this reason, but if I justify that reason, then I'll continue to fail. So why would I want to justify the reason that I'm failing? Whereas if I say, I'm failing because it's my fault, then I can correct it. If I justify it, then there's nothing to correct. I'm just a product of circumstance. So this is a very high standard. You say it, you do it. That's the standard Prabhupada wanted us to come to. So I would say that if you preach that, at least you're preaching the standard. Now, how people fall into that, that's going to be another thing. You may have to deal with it practically. But that's how Prabhupada preached. He always preached the highest standard. And then he would deal with people accordingly. So you start with the standard. You don't start with an adjustment. Right? So that's why you'll find Prabhupada's preaching was very strict. You start with a standard, then you adapt it to people accordingly. All right, I didn't chant my rounds. Okay, make it up the next day. Chant 64 on Ekadasi, make up all, 64 days, you only chanted 15 rounds. Something like that. But you can see, if you have a high level of integrity, it's going to be much easier to chant 16 rounds, follow the principles, to be a good husband, to be a good wife. Because integrity, it's so powerful, because you can commit to so many things, not just big things. Like, if I have a service, I can commit to that, but not only commit, I can commit to doing a good job. I can commit to being a good wife or a good husband. And if you have that integrity, once you commit, you'll do it. Because you committed. Isn't that interesting? So, it's not just, I'm committing to 4 principles. I can commit to so many things. I could commit that every day I'll chant good japa. That's a commitment I make to myself. And if I have integrity with myself, I'll stay true to my commitment. And if I tell you, have you ever been in a situation where somebody wanted you to do something and it really wasn't convenient, but you said okay? And then they call you up the next day and say, when are you coming over? And you totally forgot. And you're like right in the middle of something. And you're thinking, I don't want to go over. But if you're a person of integrity, you just say, yeah, I'll be there in 5 minutes, sorry. If you're a person of integrity, you wouldn't forget. But if you did, immediately you would just go, whether you want to or not. Because you would think, yeah, I told him I'm going, so I have to go. And your wife's saying, why are you going? It's so late. I said, because I told him. Well, why don't you just tell him you don't feel good? No, I can't do that. I told him I'm going. So if you guide your life that way, it'll be so much better. And your relationships will be so much better, right? Because people will trust you. One second. What if you took initiation from a guru? And the guru said, I promise to take you back to Godhead. And you couldn't trust him. That'd be pretty bad, wouldn't it? I don't know if I can trust him. I don't know if he's going to be around in 10 years. You couldn't give your faith to that person. So it's because you trust him, you give your faith. Yes?
I just had a thought. When you give a promise or, on any levels and you try to keep it, as you're developing a seed of Bach seed.
You're doing what?
Bach means speech.
Yeah.
Because you're so truthful, it's grammatical quality. So your words, they come true. Because you're also keeping the word, this really will benefit you in many ways in life later on.
Well, yeah, it said that, it said the pure devotee, whatever they say becomes true.
Yes,
So by keeping your word, you get the Shakti, that whatever you say will come true.
I was speaking it in relation to astrologers. Because astrologers, they used to be brahmanas. That's whatever they would say, it was true. But now the astrologers are Vaishyas.
Yeah, right.
Vaishyas, because they're doing business.
The Vaishyas have taken over.
They're doing business. So basically, whatever they say is just speculation.
Yeah. Let me just see if there's a question. Moksha Rupa says, I have a question. Should we try to be so compromised with positions, even if some of them are not our nature, making the effort because we know it's for a higher cause? It depends on the situation. Trying to understand this point of making decisions just by sentiment. Personally, I know that today's society always teaches to follow one's own healthy emotional integrity. So for me, it's very interesting what you're saying. Oh, that's a very good question. Because you understand what she's asking? In other words, like, you have a gut feeling. So, there's a lot of books about, follow your heart, follow your gut, and your intuition. Krishna's guiding you through intuition. That's true. It's not that I'm saying no, but if your intuition is that I shouldn't follow the regular principles, or I shouldn't follow a commitment, then where's that intuition? What mode is that intuition coming from? It can't be coming from Krishna. But sometimes, in other words, if you have an intuition to do something and that's not against any vow you made, that's different. But if, it's like I made a vow to live with this woman, but now I have an intuition it's not going to work out. So after 2 years I leave. And I have an intuition it's going to work out with this other woman. Should you follow that intuition? Okay, and maybe your intuition is correct, and maybe you'd be happier with that other woman, but the right thing is to stay with this one. And you'll be more Krishna conscious following your vow. Maybe you'll be more happy with this one, but maybe it'll take you 10 more lives to go back to Godhead. But you'll be dharmic with this one, and that's better for you. Right? So your intuition may be correct, but when it's correct and it doesn't follow principles, what's the point? It's because that's the problem. That's the very problem. Isn't it? Okay, one last question. When we are serving to please Krishna and we do not feel any bliss, does that mean that we are really doing it to please ourselves? Probably. Could mean many things. But there's could be, very much could be that. Okay, so we end class here. Is that all right? Have your permission? You have any questions? Okay. Okay, we'll let you go. See you tomorrow, same time, same station. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Hari Bol.